Welcome to the November 13th, 2024 council time. I can't believe we're in November now. We'll start with the councilor roll call. Staff, please call the roll call.
Councilor Young,
Here.
Vice Chair Belcott,
Here.
Councilor Bowerman. I think you're muted.
And I'm present.
Thank you. Chair Medvigi. And Councilor Marshall.
Here.
All accounted for.
All right, moving to item 2. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
None today.
Right, so no amendments voted or noted. Moving on to public comment, kind reminder on agenda items only, please. Do we have anyone in the room signed up to speak?
Yes, we do. Kimberly Goheen-Elbin.
Good morning. As I introduce myself, I must say, as an emergency today, that I do not feel safe here in the People's Building any longer. Yesterday, I was held illegally kidnapped. It's called a law. By exiting yesterday, I want to put it on record before I state my name, and I'm still introducing myself. I actually feel threatened here anymore. They do not know what my rights are, and they have violated me over and over and over again. That brings me to stating my name, Kimberly Goheen-Elbin. I'm a life citizen of Clark County, Washington, USA. So I ask that you do not cause harm to me anymore. Speaking to the election building update, which you can't tap on any of those three agendas. I will have to say that I'm going to have to guess what it was or what you're going to be talking about. So I'm going to relate this to the building itself. On November 5th, Election Day, I was down at that building after a meeting that was held here that my rights were violated also. I went down there and stood for 2.5 hours proudly. But to mention the building and to tie it in on agenda, so I'm not interrupted, and I want to mention also the Clark County procedure that you are to ask me to stop or to get back on topic and then give me another chance. I was violated also on record that day. You did not allow me to do that. Mr. Medvigi didn't. Getting back to the building, people were propagandized by this county and the auditor's office with a poster or flyers that stated in RCW 29A 84.510. And it said that you can't have buttons or hats along with a few other things. Well, I know my rights. I looked it up and I actually showed Mr. Kimsey in person. That was back when I was in front of the line, in the back of the line by the courthouse. An hour and 45 minutes later, I have video of Mr. Kimsey bribing me with a new ballot, a new sleeve of which I was in line for proudly, and anything he could do to get me to vote elsewhere and out of line, because I was next to that building wearing my Trump hat because I have a right to wear what I want here in America and here in Clark County where I was born and raised. And I'm going to stand up for our rights. And that's what I stand for.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker in the audience signed up to speak?
Yes. Carmen De Leon.
Present. My name is Carmen De Leon, and I'm talking about it was a presentation on the 6th, and we're talking about the 6th, and I actually seen this presentation twice now because they also give it to the city planners, and I happened to be there when the city planners was there. So they said that they had, and we talked about it yesterday, public comment period from July 9th to August 6th, maybe almost a whole month. Wow, dudes, They're talking about 500,000 population and maybe they got, what, 12 comments? You know, and that's what I'm saying is they delete whatever's negative. They don't put up whatever's there. And that's just one thing. So I was looking at this other one and it actually gives you a map. I'm sure you've seen it because they had two different versions. On one, it was page 23 and in one, it was page 15. It's this map, if you can see it at all. And it's of, I guess I can name them. Lacamas Regional Park, Louisville, Frenchman's Bar, which is the one I want to talk about. They're talking about that they want to put money into tearing it all down, again, wasting more money because the swings are too close. Hello? Get rid of the swing in the middle, save yourselves a bunch of money. You know? And can you please start working on everything they said? And you know, the big ignored part is Vancouver Lake. And the whole map has every other star around it except Vancouver Lake. So why is it there's not 1 cent going into Vancouver Lake when that's what they want to promote tourism and whatever? We went to that thing and he's talking about we got Olympic world-class sailing going on and you're not pushing that. Instead, they want to go cry about swings being too close to each other. I just told you how to solve that problem, but I found out too late, unfortunately. And it's really sad that they've got all these stars and all this money and nobody cares about the lake when we need the lake. And it is, if you use it correctly, you can make some money off that lake. So that's kind of what I was wanting to talk about. And here's the big picture with all the stars all over. And as you see, Vancouver Lake is empty. It's going to stay empty until somebody pays attention to it. Anyways, so congratulations on wasting more money abundantly by the millions. Hopefully that'll change soon.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room signed up to speak?
No, ma'am. That's it. And there's nobody online.
Right. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, old business, meeting minutes from November 6, 2024. Is there a motion for item 4.1, the minutes?
I so move approval.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Moving on to new business.
I think it's 4.2 old.
Oh, I'm sorry. 4.2, election building update. Sorry about that.
So this is a request from a couple counselors to have an update on the elections building update, I think funded through ARPA funding. So we do have Michelle Schuster, who oversees the Capitol, our auditor, Greg Kimsey, and Mike Sprinkler, our IT director. So they will come up and provide an update for council.
Good afternoon, Council. Michelle Schuster, Director of Internal Services. So with the elections project, this was originally funded by ARPA, but we did take out the loan through the REIT fund. And so we have moved this project to the REIT, or to what's now called Fund 3020, our new project fund, which, and then we were able to give back the ARPA funding to be used for other purposes. With this, the project is just over a $5 million project. It was $5 million of the loan from the REIT fund, and then $205,000 from a HAVA grant that Elections was awarded for the generator. And so at this point, we are in phase 1 of the project that began on August 5th, 2024, and it's will be substantially completed by December 27th and fully completed by January 9th. We are running really well on schedule, and so we are looking at starting to move in their furniture the second week of December to get some of the moving done to that section of the building. And then the phase 2, which is the more northern part of the building where elections currently resides. The phase 1 was where auto licensing used to be. Phase 2 is where elections currently is. That construction is going to begin on January 13th and be substantially completed by May 30th and fully completed by June 13th of 2025. During both these phases, we've also been working on the generator, which was part of the approved project. And the generator is here. You've probably seen it out there in the lot down by the print shop mailroom. We were able to get one in stock, which is a rarity. Those can be out by 40 months, but to take advantage of the HAVA grant, we need to get one here by, I think it was June 30th, Greg?
September 30th.
Or September 30th. And so we're able to find one and get it here in time. We are waiting for the transfer switch to arrive, and then we'll be able to fence that in. Right now, it's got temporary fencing around it. And then we'll be able to hook it up in phase 2 to the actual panels on the building, and the whole building will be under that new generator. So that's sort of an update of where we are on the different phases of the building, if you have more questions.
Council have any questions, comments?
Yes, Chair, I have a question. I think originally were we aware of that HAVA grant? Oh, we were. Okay, because I was wondering if we achieved any additional savings because of that, but it was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Am I speaking to my own? Jeez, this is complicated. There we go, much better. I guess I'd add, Councilor Marshall, the one thing we weren't aware of in the early stages of this was the requirement by the city of Vancouver to add a sprinkler system to the building at a cost of almost, I think, about $1 million.
It's not quite $1 million. It's in the bid, and the bid actually came in lower than we were expecting. So even with the sprinkler having to be added in, we were able to stay within the project budget, which was nice. But yes, that was an unknown at the time.
But
I
glad to
think-
have a sprinkler in there.
I think Chair Medved has some comments, but
Well, it's a question. Certainly, we had a very high voter turnout this time. I don't know if we came close to breaking records or not, but I'm really hopeful that with your expansion and reorganization of the building, that we can come up with a solution so people don't have to wait in line hours. I walked the line several times. I know you probably did as well. People with baby carriages, infants, dressed improperly, waiting in line for hours. That's deplorable. And I'm hoping this remodel and expansion, you'll look at ways that people don't have to endure that in the future. Whether you're considering opening up other remote sites to the one that you have, but that line was atrocious. And I know that you were there very, very late taking voters. I don't know if you've turned did you actually have to turn people away because they got in line after 8? So I'm just wondering what are your future plans in using this new remodel to ameliorate that situation?
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Medved. So when I first approached the council with a request for the expansion of the work area elections office, we were hoping that we'd have the work done for this year's general election. Unfortunately, the approval of that funding was delayed by a few months, which made it we weren't able to expand the work area for this year's general election. We will, if we had been able to proceed with this construction project as originally put forth by my office, we would have almost doubled the number, more than doubled. No, almost more. We would have gone from 7 to 13 workstations for the front counter clerks, and would have dramatically increased sort of the throughput of the elections office. And that line would have, I'm sure we still would have had a line, but it would have gone much, much faster than we saw that day. It would have gone almost twice as fast because we would have had almost twice as many people processing the replacement ballots, the voter registrations, the reissues that we were doing that day. Oh, and then to your last question, no, anyone who was in line at 8:00 p.m. Was able to complete their business, cast a ballot, whatever it was they're there for. So just like when we had polling places, if someone was in line at 8:00 p.m., they were able to cast a ballot.
So thanks for throwing us under the bus again. That's appreciated.
Well,
Was anyone
Counselor?
actually turned around? Was anyone past that 8:00 cutoff in line?
Counselor, I'm simply relaying the facts here. If you
Yeah, I got it, Greg. Thanks. We appreciate that. Was anyone turned away after 8:00? Do you
there
know?
may well have been people who came to the elections office after 8:00 p.m. who were not in the line at 8:00 p.m. But at 8:00 p.m., we established the end of the line, and everyone who was there at 8:00 p.m. or earlier was able to cast a ballot.
So if there are any other construction delays or anything come up, perhaps in anticipation of voters coming to your building, you'll have some alternate plans to accommodate that crowd.
Home to go to the Dropbox.
Well, again, going from 7 workstations to 13 workstations will absolutely address that crowd. I'd also add, I guess, that we were open the Saturday before Election Day. People could have come to the office on that day to vote their ballot, receive a ballot, update their registration. You know, it's not at all unusual for people to end up in a line on Election Day. I'm not sure you could, I suppose, conceivably you could create a large enough capacity to have no line whatsoever at Election Day, but it seems to be human nature that some people will delay that until the actual day of election. And I think if you will recall, as you were traveling the line, people are in remarkably good spirits when they're there. There's a very positive atmosphere. I mean, this is now my 7th presidential election. I've only had one time that I can recall where a citizen was angry with me, yelled at me because of the length of the wait. So it'll be a much, we'll have a much higher throughput when we've completed this expansion of the work area.
Any other counselor comments or questions?
Yes. I sorry, we veered off subject here, but I was curious. So
Fully expected.
yes, I drove by. I don't know what time it was. It was probably like around 9 o'clock or something like that, 8, 9 o'clock. Saw that big line, but I was surprised to see that less than half a block away there was the ballot box, and I drove right up to it, waited for one car, talked to the people that were there, and then drove on. So what was the nature of the people that were in line? Were they needing to do things that they couldn't use the Dropbox for? Or was it some people that just felt more comfortable handing it in person? What was the nature of
So a combination of people who are in our state, of course, as you might know, you can register to vote on election day and get a ballot for that election. So that's some portion of those people. Some of those people had misplaced their ballot, needed a replacement ballot. Some of those people had moved since their first ballot was issued to them, so they're getting a reissued ballot. And then there are some people who are in that line who want to, quote unquote, vote in person. And they may not have brought their ballot with them. What they I really kind of don't understand is that the ballot they're going to be issued across the counter is exactly the same ballot that was mailed to them. And then after they vote that ballot, they're going to put it in a ballot drop box just as they would do with any other ballot. Certainly there were some people there that were felt more comfortable depositing their ballot in a ballot drop box that was located inside the elections office building itself. I guess I'll add that even after the, very unfortunate incident at the Fisher's Landing C-Tran ballot drop box with the incendiary device that was attached to that, we had almost as many ballots returned to ballot drop boxes this year as any other year. And in fact, kind of proportionally after that incident at Fisher's Landing, we saw increased participation of ballot drop boxes relative to the last presidential election. So lots of people were, I think, comforted by the steps we took to ensure the security of ballots deposited in ballot drop boxes, but there certainly were some people who came to the elections office to put it into a ballot drop box in the elections office.
Thank you for that, and looking forward to having 13 stations next year. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a comment. I just wanted to clarify with Michelle, what's the remodel budget look like? Are we on target? Are we under, or what does that look like?
Yes, so right now what we have under contract and the known expenses we are looking right now to have about $137,000. But since we haven't gotten to the phase 2, there could always be a change order. We did have one change order of some stuff we had to correct on the phase 1 side. And so we do like to have a little bit of a cushion, but right now we're tracking to pretty much spend it all.
Okay, thank you. And then my other comment or question is, I know that there were several articles written by various different press about the ballot box being destroyed in Vancouver. And I just wanted to let the public know, we as a council did not ever receive a request for cameras. I'm sure it had something to do with the price of those cameras and the monitoring. Is there any reconsideration for that?
Councillor Belcott, at the risk of being accused once again of throwing you under the bus, which I would reject soundly, you did receive a request for cameras at ballot drop boxes. You had 2 citizens come before you and very specifically ask for cameras at ballot drop boxes. My response to you in a written form was, if the council wanted to provide funding for cameras at ballot drop boxes, I think the specific wording in my document to you was be willing to work with the council to install those cameras at ballot drop boxes. That's all in the past. I think I have said, anyway, you will be receiving a request from the auditor's office for three things. One, to study our existing monitoring system at the ballot drop boxes. There are, as you might know, the Fisher's Landing C-Tran Transit Center ballot drop box had 3 cameras on it. So we have cameras at many of our ballot drop boxes already. So we're going to want to go out and study and see what we have at each of the ballot drop boxes. Can they provide, new word for me, actionable intelligence for law enforcement, in addition to hopefully providing more deterrence than the cameras that C-Tran provided. And then, so we'll have to do some kind of study to understand what we have currently, what we should install to provide that deterrence and actionable intelligence. And then the cost to install that system, and then the cost to manage that system going forward, responding to public records requests and all the other expenses that go in with having that kind of surveillance system. So yeah, you absolutely will be receiving a request from me for those 3 expenses.
I have a comment, Chair.
Go ahead, Councilor Bowerman.
I hear you that there was somebody in the public who said something during public testimony very briefly about having cameras. However, the public does not speak for your requests for funding. You speak for your department's requests for funding, and we did not receive a request from you. So let's not misrepresent that. And with the request that you have coming forward, if somebody in the public happens to mention something that they think would be a great idea, that is not a request for your office. It's what you state and what you submit that is the request. And I know that you know that. I have to mention it because you initiated it.
I don't believe I've ever stated that I have made a formal request to the council for that funding, Councilor Bowerman.
I hear you. You have not, but you did say that we had received a request for
Well, Counselor-
funding of that, and we had not, because that
Counselor-
request would have come from you.
You know, at the risk of splitting hairs, and you know, what's past is past. I will say in my the way I conduct myself as an elected official is when I hear concerns from citizens, I listen to those concerns and will respond to those concerns. So that's the way I conduct my affairs. So let's kind of move forward, shall we?
Any other comments or questions from the council?
Yes, Chair. So thank you for all the work that you've had to do to secure the elections. I appreciate it. And just related to a request that may come forward in the future, I don't recall, did you say fire extinguishers? Because I think as we can be, and I appreciate trying to be strategic so that we can do this in a most cost-effective way. I was going to suggest a work session sometime in the future, so I'm glad you're thinking about that already.
Thank you, Councilor Marshall. Yes, you will also be receiving a request for funding for fire extinguishers, a different type of fire extinguisher than we currently have installed in all those ballot drop boxes. Much more expensive, of
Fair,
course.
just comment.
Go ahead, Councilor Young.
So just wanted to say I'm disappointed with the nature of the conversation. It's been demeaning, disrespectful, and I don't think it was appropriate.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say thank you for your work this year. We had some serious issues that we've never had to deal with before, and the election ran smoothly. So I appreciate that work from you.
No, I'm happy to have a discussion.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what Glenn meant by that, but Karen Bowerman was spot on based on newspaper articles of the auditor throwing us under the bus for not having surveillance cameras approved for ballot boxes. We're going through funding season now, and any director knows that to get a funded package, you have to have a lot of detail, estimates of what the costs would be, and then a recommendation from the department to move anything forward. So out in the public domain, we were thrown under the bus, just as we were in an offhanded way for the long line at voting. It's not our responsibility to keep that line down. And whether or not you approve a package in the future, whether it is worth $1 million or whatever it costs to put additional cameras on the drop boxes, I don't know. I don't see it as a real solution. Voting in person is a real solution. And having multiple places where people can go, where they don't have to stand in a couple-hour line, is a good way to plan. So anyway, Glenn, I'm not sure who you were pointing your comments at, but Karen Bowerman's points were well taken, and I would just say ditto.
Right. Any further comment or questions? All right. Thank you. I appreciate the update and the information. All right, moving on to 4.3, Tri Mountain.
Good afternoon again, Michelle Schuster, Director of Residential Services. So a little information about what was taking place. So the county released a notice of public auction per RCW 36.34.030. This required us to publish notices that were released on September 9th and September 18th. And the notice of the public auction was released on September 18th during the same time period as that second notice, which is allowed. The notice had a minimum bid in it of $3,525,000, which was based off an appraisal that we completed in July of 2023. And that was done under the assumption that the property would be kept as a golf course. So we did ask the appraiser to appraise as a golf course, not as other uses that could be done with the property. The site is approximately 132,000 acres of open space, zoned Parks Open Space Ag 20. And the property includes a clubhouse, an office, 2 maintenance buildings, a driving range, a public 18-hole golf course, other very small buildings, and all the inventory and equipment except for the golf carts that are on a lease and are not part of the site. We did do a site walkthrough on Wednesday, September 25th at 9:30 a.m., and 14 people signed into attendance. A few people did walk out before signing as they found out that the auction was under the condition that it did remain a golf course. Questions were accepted through Thursday, October 24th at 4 p.m., and we received 29 unique questions from interested parties. Sealed bids were received at 10 a.m., had to be received by 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October 30th, and were opened at 10:05 in a public forum by purchasing. We received 2 bids, both of them coming from the Cowlitz Economic Authority. Of the 2 bids were received, one bid was for $3.6 million and acknowledging all of the restrictions. And the second bid was for $5 million, but it did not meet the bid requirements as they did have a proviso that they wrote into their bid request to terminate all the restrictions and covenants after 5 years. We were asked to draft up language, and there was language in the actual bid documents about what the golf course could be used for. And so we are putting forward a covenant that we're working with legal on. And this covenant that we're going to put into the sales agreement, should it move forward, is that the purchaser hereby makes the following covenants for itself, its assigned and successors in interest, and those into whose ownership the property may pass. It being the parties' intent and agreement that this covenant shall run with the land in perpetuity. It is the purpose of this covenant that the property be maintained in its current natural state, that the property be operated and maintained as a regulation 18-hole golf course, that the use of the golf course shall remain fully open to the public in order to help serve the recreational needs of all Clark County citizens, and that the property's natural features and aesthetics shall be preserved. The purchaser agrees to execute a covenant running with the land in a form acceptable to the seller for recording purposes to give effect to the covenants that are set forth herein. In addition, Clark County is going to retain a 30-foot half width along the north side of the property, northwest 299th Street, and address the right-of-way alignment along Northwest 11th Avenue for future interest of the county for any road projects or public needs. And so at this point, is there any questions of the council about this?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, Counselor Garman.
Was just, and you probably said this, but I missed it. In the event that in this covenant, the land sells yet again, does the covenant go with it?
Yes,
indefinitely, and is that provided for?
Yeah, we actually have that in the first thing where if there are any assignments or successors in interest and the ownership should pass, that this carries forward with it. We will actually put the covenant onto the actual plots when we record it. So
that's great.
Yes, it will stay with it.
Great.
Other counselors? Chair
Yeah.
Medici. Oh, you're on mute. We can't hear you, Chair Medici. We'll go to Counselor Young and then we'll go back to you. Maybe you can get the sound sorted out. Counselor Young?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm, first of all, thank you for considering the future use of that. I think that was a good catch. So thank you for doing that. I mean, I am curious though, and I am definitely in favor of the covenant, to keep it a golf course, but how does that work? I mean, in 100 years from now, if golf isn't even a sport anymore, what happens with that? Is there a mechanism that the covenant can be released?
Yes, and that requires them to come back in front of the council at the time they would wish to seek it possibly being released. Because yes, I I did think of there are examples. I mean, laws change, things change. We're looking at like all the new clean building acts and electrical and gas and stuff. There could be something that maybe golf courses and the chemicals used on golf courses couldn't be allowed in the future. And so that would be an example that they might have to come back to you because it can't legally be a golf course anymore. So yes, we do have language that was in the bid documents that the council could reconsider at a future date, but it would have to come back in front of council to have those covenants lifted.
Great, thank
Yep.
you.
Mhm.
Other questions, comments? Chair Mevici? I can't hear you. I can see your mouth moving.
Okay.
Oh, we
I
heard
could
you.
hear, I could hear you.
You can hear me or you can't?
Yes, now we can.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I've been unmuted the entire time. I never know what you're hearing and not. So please let me know when I kind of fade. So I received a phone call that complained that they didn't even know the golf course was for sale because normal places where realtors look for land being available, this wasn't advertised. So
Mhm.
what can you tell me? And so I'm concerned that we only had one really responsive bidder. Can you tell me how we listed it?
Mhm. Yeah, so the way this has to be listed is it is known as a public auction, and so it has to be published out there in the publications of records, and when we do put it in a couple of other publications, Hispanic, the Latino newspaper, and but it does go in our publication record, which is the newspaper, and it doesn't have to be sold with a real estate agent and be posted on it. That's not unfortunately how county and governmental properties are sold. They're sold at a public auction is what it's called.
So what we did was legal, but was it
Mhm.
effective in making it known to the public
Mhm.
that this property would be available to continue on as a golf course? And
Mhm.
I understand there are a number of people that did
Mhm.
not want to bid when they
Yep.
heard it couldn't be developed into homes.
Right.
And I would add that I did an overview
Mhm.
to check out whether or not there could be any development along the golf course, and I don't think there could be. You know, around the perimeter there would be room if the land came available, but the fairways are much too close together to allow for homes to be built. So I realized that was a stumbling block for a lot of developers.
Yeah. And we did we did develop a plan holders list also of people that we also just notify out. And we went through and found all the top golf course owners in the country and blanketed out to all their stuff. And then also some of the local real estate companies that had reached out to us, and then anyone else who had reached out to us. So I believe we blanketed, I'd have to look exactly, but I think we sent out at least 20 people that weren't notified through the regular publications that were notified off our plan holder list. And then we did have a number of parties who reached out to us before it went out after seeing the publications to be added to the plan holder list. So we did do other stuff besides just posting in the local newspapers.
Did you tell the public?
Yes, it was released in public formats.
Okay, thank you for that. And, you know, most of the misinformation that we've been seeing in letters to the editor and by email all relate to the fact that we're selling the golf course and there's going to be houses there. But I've never heard one counselor ever even consider just opening it up for development. We always intended for it to be a private golf course open to the public. So I'm hoping that finally gets laid to rest. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair, I have a couple of thoughts.
Go ahead, Counselor Marshall.
Yeah, I've heard from a number of people, and I think there's a lot of golfers out there that are very passionate about this. And Counselor Young, I think they'd be shocked to hear that there'd be any possibility that there wouldn't be golf in 100 years. So let's set that aside. I'm wondering, though, could you go through just a little bit of the background of when we acquired the golf course, how we've done as managers of the golf course? Has it been a revenue generator? I know there's maintenance that needs to occur that has been disclosed, but could you go through a little of that?
Yep. So the property land only was originally purchased in June of 93 by the Port of Vancouver. In January of 97, the Port of Ridgefield entered into MOU with Clark County, whereas the county would purchase the golf course from the port and grant the port a lease option to the facility. Under the terms of the proposed lease, the port would be responsible for paying a variable rent to the county. In September of 1997, Clark County assumed ownership of the golf course after the Port of Ridgefield could not financially continue to support the facility. And so we have had it since that time. The current management company, which started out as Billy Casper Golf Management, and has since changed their name first to Indigo Golf, and now it's Troon, entered into a long-term management agreement with us in December of 2002. And so we have been with them working as our operator of the facility since that date. As far as revenues being brought in by the course, up until the last couple years, we have been upside down on the course, and a lot of that was due to we had a heavy debt service on it. We did fully pay off the debt service. We paid off the remaining years because it wasn't supposed to be paid off till 2027, but we did pay off the debt service in 2020 with REIT funding, REIT 2, which was allowed. And so so that made it that we weren't paying $500,000 a year to the debt service. And so that has helped us out drastically. This year, currently, we're looking at being upside down about $150,000 if we were to just stop everything today. But we do have a couple months and we still have revenue coming in for the next few months. So I expect us to balance out probably this year. Last year, we made about $386,000 off the course. The year before that, $276,000. The year before that, $395,000. The year before that, we about broke even the 2 years prior to that. And then there's quite a few years where we're upside down the course. We do have a reserve balance with this course, as there's been positive years, there's been negative years. And I believe at the end of this year, I expect that to be right around $1.4 million left in that reserve balance that is in the Tri-Mountain Golf Course Fund. I do have our auditor's office looking at what we could do should the sale be approved, of what we can do with the reserve balance and the sales money, if any of it has to go back to REIT 2 because REIT 2 did help support this, or if it can be something that can maybe be moved into the general fund. Unfortunately, they're still waiting for some responses back from MRSC before we'll have that formally known. And then that is sort of the revenue expense for our Tri-Mountain Golf Course Fund because it's got its own fund. But then, like you said, we do have maintenance and upkeep on the course. And so our facility fund, I would say on average, it's about $50,000 a year. Starting back in, I believe it was 2019, we finally started sending some money from the golf course fund over at the amount of $45,000 per year. But before that, everything that was done maintenance-wise by maintenance was being picked up by the general fund portion of the money that was given to the facilities fund. So in the last couple of years, there's still been a little bit over the $45,000 per year that the general fund's been picking up. And then, of course, there is a lot of auditing of the books that have to happen with this course. And so that is all by employees funded by the general fund also. So there is things outside what's being covered by the golf course fund. So
thank you for all that information. That's helpful. And I think the concerns I would have is really securing that future use. And this is something that I just thought of sitting up here because the Cowlitz is a sovereign nation. And if they own the property, if there is any kind of legal issues related to that, or we could foresee anything related to that.
Yeah, and I've actually been working with legal on that also. We do have a clause in the sales agreement that we're still drafting up, but to basically have the jurisdiction and that this would fall under so that we wouldn't have this as part of the tribal land. It would stay as land that we could still have under the tax roll and stuff. So yeah. So we are looking at putting wording into the sales agreement about that.
Great. I'm glad you've been thinking about that. And so currently it's open space, is zoned open space Ag 20, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I just think about, and so it's outside of a growth boundary.
Yes.
currently. Yeah,
Mhm.
and just thinking of the comp plan and our framework plan to have a green space between some of the cities, this could be a little part of that in perpetuity green space between some of the cities. And so just that securing it for the future, there have been some concerns about the price going up to play. And I think maybe we've charged people for that to maintain it. But I know it's a very popular course. There's courses that are closing down. I think it's a really good service and feature to have in the community. So thanks for your work on this.
Kira Mevaji, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. So most of the discussion we've had over the years has been in executive session. And most of it is focused on having audits, that we were losing money, that the golf course was, like any of our contracts, a one-way street for revenue, and that we were covering all the operations and maintenance and losing money off and on. I know there in the last couple of years, we were hearing that the current operator under the current contract was doing better. You know, there's been discussion on altering the contract and beverages and food concessionaires so that the operator could make more money. But what I'm hearing is a little bit different than my recollection over the last 6 years of discussions on whether to sell this golf course. What I'm hearing is, okay, we've paid off the debt. This operator is doing well. We have a positive cash flow, even considering the operations and maintenance.
Well,
So what I'm hearing is a different narrative that was kind of pushing us towards considering selling this property. And quite frankly, I don't think we can predict with our legal team what could happen if a nation bought that property and whether or not they would be bound by any of our contract or covenants if that land was to become their own. So I'm more concerned about the issue of, I mean, I think it's a perfect fit for the Cowlitz tribe to have it, especially being so close in place to their casino and other operations. But so if it's healthy, if we're able to manage the contract now where we weren't doing such a great job before, maybe we should keep it. I'm just throwing that out there because I'm hearing different
Yeah.
data that I've heard over the last 6 years.
yeah. So one thing I didn't bring up when the question was asked that maybe, so we didn't discuss as we were just answering that question about the maintenance on it as far as the actual, what I talked about was just a little bit of maintenance our staff does, just daily routine M&O each year, you know, things that need to be just done. But from the main facilities condition report that we did in 2019, over the next 20 years, there's $1.5 million worth of maintenance that's going to be needed to be done on the course. And the current deficiencies on it are right about $384,000 plus the irrigation system we're currently working on. So there are a lot of upcoming maintenance things over the next 20 years that we're going to have to do if we do keep this course. And so I maybe didn't state that quite correctly by giving that information as I've given it in past presentations, but there is a lot. And like I said, even though we've been really, you know, decent the last couple years, there is a lot of stuff that isn't being covered by the Tri-Mountain Golf Course Fund, like the staff time, like the above and beyond the $45,000 for maintaining it. And like I said, this year, if we were to just stop as of today, we're upside down 150,000. Hopefully we'll keep picking up revenue. The weather will stay decent for the rest of the year, but right now we are not on track to break even this year. So, yeah. So, yeah, I don't think I meant to relate different than I've been giving because it hasn't really changed much.
Chair?
Go ahead, Counselor Young.
Yeah, I see this kind of as like, I compare it to things that I have experience with, but a rental house. Sure, the rent that's coming in might cover the mortgage payment every month, but once every 20 years, you got to replace that roof. You know, you every 15 years, you got to replace that water heater. Those are the kinds of things that have to be factored in, even though we might be net positive or close to it at this point. We're deferring some of those large expenses when we should be planning for them.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say, I think this is a good fit. I really do. I think the tribe has shown themselves to be good partners in our community. I think they will choose to honor our request. I don't see any problems going forward with that. Supportive of moving forward with the sale.
The public input.
I just have a quick question related to the public input. This still would go before the council and there would be, it would be considered at one of our council meetings and the public would have an opportunity to provide any comments they have related to the potential sale. And would we be looking at potentially doing that before the end of this year?
Due to our ARPA funding, we can't have a sale this year without losing some of our ARPA money. So the sale would actually take place in early 2025 if we decide to proceed with it. So, and that's something the auditor's office has determined for us. So we had in the actual bid documents that the sale would take place in early 2025 for the actual sale to go through.
But can council approve a staff report and the purchase and sale agreement with the date
With a
of 2025?
Yeah, with a purchase date.
So if we
Yes.
have it ready, it could be possibly on the, I would assume, the last meeting
Yes.
of the year on
Mhm.
December 3rd.
Yes. Mhm.
Along with everything else. Well, I would favor moving it forward so that there's an opportunity for the public to weigh in and make our final decision then.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd like to see it go to a public hearing as soon as we can. And I'm sure the bidders would like to see that happen as well.
Is that something, Kathleen, we need to vote on? Or a thumbs up?
Well, I just got the majority thumbs up to move forward. So Michelle can reach out to the bidder and start negotiating the purchase and sale agreement and bring that back to council. So of course, if Councilor Bowerman or Councilor Belcott wants to weigh in on that vote, but I did hear 3 comfortable moving forward.
I'm a
I
thumbs up.
am comfortable as well, but have a question. There was mention of having a public hearing per se. Is that a part of what's going to come forward?
No, it'll be on a separate business item on a Tuesday meeting.
And there will be no public hearing on it, correct?
Not on that specifically, but the public has an opportunity to speak to agenda items on our Tuesday meeting, so they will
Surely.
be able to provide feedback.
Surely, yes.
Right, with that, thank you, Michelle, for the update. We really appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, moving on to 4.4, Law and Justice, potential next steps.
I'm going to invite the sheriff, his staff, and Mark Gasaway to join in this discussion. So I'll start it out, and then we've got some information to share. It does appear that Proposition 4 with Vancouver is not passing or has not passed within the city. As you know, our law and justice partners have been working together to determine potential impacts for that, as well as adding sheriff deputies and staff. And so we've gotten some updated numbers of our law and justice partners. If council were to move forward with the sheriff's office, and it's based on 40 deputies and 16 support staff, 16. I would wait. I just want to make sure, Mark, if what they're pulling up is what you want pulled up. So we're trying to update the model to look at what costing would be. We haven't heard from all of our partners on the impacts. Of course, it would be less than what it was with Proposition 4. I mentioned when I asked the council to remove this from the agenda that public safety sales tax is not an option in February. That's only an option in the primary and general election. The levy lid lift is an option for February, we would, if council wants to move forward with that, we do have those costing as well that you've seen before of how much revenue we generate based on the amount. If council wants to move forward with that, we do have a little bit of a timing issue. We need to get all of our documents to the auditor's office by December 13th. And then based on today, I might be actually adding a special council time on Monday afternoon because I forgot Tuesday, we got counselors at a conference so that we can continue this discussion. We do have some draft resolutions that I'll bring back based on today's discussion as well. And I know I talked to the sheriff and Amber last week looking at how it could look and like phasing it in just with the realization of hiring and with the academies that they have to attend. And if it goes in front of the taxpayers and voters in February and it passes, there is a lag time before we start seeing the revenue. And then I also mentioned this morning that if that all happens, we'll do a special budget hearing in the year so that we're not delaying the revenues coming in and being able to move forward with any hires. So I think at this point, I don't know if Mark, so Mark just got back from like a 3-week vacation and so has been helping tremendously since Monday morning or actually, yeah, since before we started work this week to kind of look at the costing model. And I don't know, Sheriff, if you want to talk about your needs again and what this would look like and impacts for you.
All right. Is it on? All right. Good afternoon, Council and County Manager. I think we've talked about this a lot back in July. If you remember, twice we were here. And so basically I'm back. We were kind of watching the council decided at that time to look at it later on. And now that Prop 4 appears to have not passed, it gives an opportunity to look at how the council might fund our needs. We talked about the bottom line is we need 40 deputies at the sheriff's office and 16 support staff to get to where we need to be today. But projecting out, and I've been working with the county manager over a 4-year period and how that looks like. Obviously, there's other costs, and I'm aware that the sheriff's office is aware that that we haven't finalized all those other, like you just said, there's some other departments have to come in there. So how, if a levy lid lift is considered, what amount would cover all those costs? I'm assuming that you'll be looking at that today, but I'll just reiterate what has been said a lot in those July meetings. And the public has said, a lot of you go to the public meetings I go to, I have the town halls, and they talk about resources at the sheriff's office, and we're getting further and further behind with our staffing. And then internally, our staff are getting overworked, and we're at a breaking point almost. The calls that they go to, the laws that change, the amount of people it takes to maintain all that is all affecting it. And we can't continue this way. We're at, I believe, don't quite quote me on this, I'll be 0.57, 0.58 deputies per 1,000 residents, where comparatively speaking, the city of Vancouver has almost 3 times that amount. Now, good for them. But unincorporated Clark County is suffering. And we have a lot of people out there, especially North County. Council Marshall we're not giving the services that we should be giving. So the request was made for 40 deputies, and I'm just going to look at my notes here. And I believe 16 support staff was our request. That includes startup costs and then ongoing salaries, knowing that there are other departments, the courts, and I won't name them all here, but that have some downstream effects from that as well. So I am formally asking today that the council consider a levy lid lift to cover these costs of all those employees. And then Mark has the numbers.
Does council have any questions before Mark goes over some of the models?
Yes, I have a
quick question for the sheriff. What is the size of your force right now? How many deputies do you have? I mean, what kind of percentage wise is this going to improve your numbers?
Well, actually, just a sworn deputy, I believe I'll pull up here 102 deputies. The 100 sworn total is about 153, but that includes me, command staff, commanders, and sergeants. But deputies itself is about 102. But sworn personnel is 153, so that increases it You can do the math, is that third, maybe a little bit less than a third. And again, this has been going on for years. And what's going to happen is, even though we get to, if this was approved and it went through 4 or 5 years from now, we're still going to be, we're at a mark where we'll be 10 to 15 behind then too. I think you can see that. I don't know if that can be built in there, but we're just at a point where 40 gets us up to there today. But 4 or 5 years from now, again, with the growth of the county, we're going to be looking at more staffing.
So back in July, we were looking at fairly the same numbers, but focusing on 13 new deputies, somewhat of a phased approach. You know, I'm kind of getting that feedback from Vancouver's online, the blogs, that it was just too big all at once. And I'm just wondering, you know, what happened to asking for a lesser amount of deputies up front?
I think there might be some confusion. We did put in the general request of 12 deputies just right now to cover the overtime costs. That's just gets to, so we're not working so much overtime. So if you took those 12, or I think it was 13, maybe 12 deputies to sergeant, if that would have been approved for the general fund right now, we would have subtracted that from our request of the 40. So I believe that's why there's a little bit. That's 12 is just an immediate to get this overtime issue under control. But overall, our staffing needs is a total of 40. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, so there's no way to phase this. There's no, I know that we had a plan before my time and your time that the county was going to add deputies, and then they never owned up to that check. But there was a way to add deputies every year, basically overstrength, until you would achieve the number of personnel that would keep up with our population. And so we're way behind. I understand that, but I'm just wondering if we could get back to something like that so we don't throttle the public with such a big ask.
Go ahead. Do you want to?
Oh, okay. It's a little different than what I originally thought the question was, because what for the 40, we are looking at phasing that over a
That's
few
correct.
years, but it would be a total of 40 in the public. And the sheriff is correct. They did submit a request for a 13, I think. But I also think a counselor suggested 13 as well prior to the budget submissions when we had the original discussion of 40.
Just a comment, if I may.
Go ahead,
That was,
Councilmember.
that was when Chief McCabe, I think, was with us at that time. And I had asked him if the request for 13 that I thought two was going to be in the budget, if that would then be a decline in the 40 that would be requested for the levy lid lift. And I believe he said yes. So that was the phasing in, I think, that Chair Medvedi, that you're thinking of. And that was how I saw it at that time as well. But I'm not exactly clear on what we're looking at now. Is there any request for 13 that exists now?
There is in the budget process. My recommendations that I shared this morning is not recommending that because we don't have the funding to pay for them. However, knowing that we're having this discussion, and if there is a revenue source such as a levy lid lift, then we would do a budget hearing next year if that's what council chooses to address that next year. We don't have the funding in general fund to pay for that this year. If I did, it would have been recommended.
Or we could go ahead with the full 40 in the levy lid lift, correct?
Yes.
And then we'd be in the same place, as I understand it.
I'm not understanding what you mean by the same place
as doing 15 or 13, I guess it was now. And then the lesser, whatever 40 minus 13 is 27 for the levy lid lift.
Yes. So if council decide to go out for an amount that would cover all 40, I anticipate that would be phased in because of the hiring timeline and the timeline for the revenue. But the 40 would potentially be fully funded by that levy lid lift over a few years potentially. We would have to map that out. But I think we were looking at a partial year next year if it went out in February, and then the 2 following full years for the sheriff to be able to recruit for that. And this isn't talking about the other partners.
Mhm.
Are you at full staffing now, Sheriff, for positions that are funded?
We're getting close. We just had quite a few graduate. We're still hiring. But as you know, even though when we hire, we still lose some through training and through attrition. So it's that constant, but we're getting up to there. We're getting very close. Yes, we would be at a point. I mean, the goal is to be fully staffed, and then we're at a position where we couldn't do backgrounds. We couldn't do anything. We're at a standstill because we don't have any open positions.
How
Yes.
many funded open positions are there right now?
I'm going to give my best guess on a deputy sheriff position. I believe there's 7 to 10, but we are still getting ready for the December academy. We have a few weeks, and we're still in the process of hiring those people, trying to get a full academy. Yes.
I have
Chair,
a comment.
I'd have to look at the exact numbers on that, so I just want to let you know that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, Councilor Marshall, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. So the numbers we're about to look at, will they include the downstream impacts to all of law and justice as well? Okay, thank you.
I have a comment. So when was the last time, and maybe Sheriff, you answered this a while back because we've had lots of conversations about this. When was attrition or growth ever discussed in FTEs for the sheriff's department? Has this always been like a stagnant number of and not projecting for the future growth of our county?
Well, I don't know how much time we have today, but just basically going back to 25 years ago, Sheriff Lucas saw this issue, this decline in population and deputies. And you can actually still pull them up on YouTube, some of the conversations he had with the council saying we need to keep up. There was some movement, I want to say maybe in 2008 at our highest level. And then in maybe 2016, the council said, we recognize this, we need to add 4 per year. I actually don't know what happened back then. Economy, other things. There was never a full commitment, never a revenue source identified to meet that. So from 2008, we haven't grown. I will take that back. The public sales safety tax added 7 positions, but that was something that, the public asked for. It was voted upon, and we got those positions for that. So that's the only time.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments from the council?
Yeah, I think a big part of this conversation is really essentially what happened is Orchards and Hazeldale grew up. They became urban areas that required urban attention, and we have no path for generating revenue to cover those services. I think that's essentially what's happened. We just haven't grown to cover those needs.
And the law changes did make a difference 3 years ago. What normally, when I worked many years ago, 2 people could handle a call. It's 4 to 5 now with the resources that we have to, and the de-escalation we have to do. So that has added that as well.
I just want to add a quick comment to the sheriff's answer. In conversation with the prior sheriff, what was explained to me, and after 2008 and then 2013, there was basically a handshake deal with the council or commission at the time to be able to hire over strength every year by 3 or 4 deputies and just build on the staffing over a number of years. That never happened, nor do I understand that anyone ever looked at the revenue stream to cover those additional positions to get those numbers up. So my perspective is that it was addressed, but no one looked at the revenue stream and no one actually did it. So we've gotten so far behind. So I don't want any of my statements previously to be misconstrued. This is one area we have to focus on. And just recently, you did some retail theft stings. The public wants that. The public wants law and order. And then the question comes, well, what happens downstream? What happens in the PA's office? What
Mhm.
happens in the court? Are these people going to jail? Are we stopping them? Or are they just going right back into a revolving door and going out into the street? So we need to look at all that data and really parse through this. But no matter what, we have to figure this out. And if it's a levy lift that we need to do, I'm all in favor of putting it out there. I just don't want it to fail. I don't want to see Prop 4 revisited with the county ask. So we need to be behind it. I want to see a fully staffed sheriff. I support the 40 additional deputies plus support staff. We need to move forward. It has to happen. We're too far behind in law and patrolling out in the county area.
Can we look at the numbers and strategy of what a levy lid lift actually could raise?
There we go. Could you scroll down a little bit, please? So what I'm going to show you is a couple sets of numbers, and what I want you to focus on is the green bar. And again, keep in mind, these are modeled numbers. And so what we're looking at, it's a phased-in approach where there would be a net new officers, a net new 10 officers until we reach the 40. So, because that's the first year we would have
25 would be a partial year, 26 would be a full year if we went out in February, right? So for you online, I just asked, why is it the year 2027? It should be earlier, unless Mark has a reason.
the only reason we can change the years. The only reason is because if it goes out in 2025, we're not going to start collecting revenue until 2026, which means that the hiring wouldn't happen until 2026.
Why does it take until 2026? Because I thought it was a few months or like the next quarter to get it up, and then it's a 3-month leg before we receive the
Not with
funding.
the levy lid lifted. It
Okay.
can't be till the following year.
Okay.
So there's a year lag. Regardless of the years, you can see the phased-in approach over the next 10 years. There's two components to this. There's the ongoing cost, which is the cumulative ongoing, and then there's the startup costs. So you can see once it gets fully staffed, and on this model, it says 2030, it's around $10.5 million. Then it drops back down a little bit because we've completed that startup period. So we've paid for the startup costs for those. So it drops down. But again, you can see and again, primarily for the council, this is reference. This is what it will cost once the full contingency of officers and support are brought on board. Does that make sense?
So this is including the downstream cost?
No, this
No,
is
okay.
just the sheriff's office. Okay, so keep that number in mind. The fully built out is going to be around $10 million for the sheriff's office. Then we're going to go to another tab, and if you could go to the summary of estimates tab. And all the way to the bottom, please. This is not the one I just sent you. Sorry, it was on the email.
What's the tab again?
Estimates, summary of estimates. This one? Yeah, but I just sent one that would have more data on it. Yeah.
It's that one.
Well, It's not sending the right version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what it is. Sorry. So since this morning, I've been able to accumulate the information for more of the departments. And it includes now jail and the district court numbers. The only thing that I haven't put in it is the prosecuting attorney. I'm still waiting on those numbers. So the phased in approach, again, the cost numbers that we're looking at for the downstream services starts out at 1.7 million in 2026. And that's primarily to staff up the jail. And then in 2027, it goes to 4.8 million, 2028, 6.7, 2029 is 8.2, 2030 is 9.6, 2031 is 10.7, and 2032 is 11.4. So again, those are all the downstream costs that would be associated with adding the staffing to the sheriff's office, except for the PA's office, which I'm still waiting on data for. So, oh, and public defenders.
Any other comments or questions from the council?
The total of the two with the sheriff and the downstream impact will be about 21 million by the time we get to 2032. Yeah.
So the downstream impact is larger than the sheriff's deputies themselves.
Adding corrections, oh, sorry.
Yes, but it does include, like I said, it includes district court, jail, superior court, clerk's office, everything. I have everything entered in the model except the PA, which I don't have the information on yet. So you're right. I think the downstream impact on the court side of things, including corrections and juvenile and everything, it's almost the same, but it's slightly higher.
So this does not include any potential cost recovery strategies that we might be looking at?
It does include the cost. We do recover some amounts through district court. But again, if these are impacts created by our sheriff's office, they're not going to be billable to the cities. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah.
A question. Have you already had a chance, Mark, to figure out the impact of these numbers on the taxpayer?
Yes. And it's on the other.
Yeah, and
one.
Of
No.
course.
Yes.
So
Yeah, if you scroll down on this one, keep going. Keep going. Keep going, right there. Okay, these are the numbers I was just telling you. So this is the impact of the downstream services by year as we phase in the officers, and support staff for the sheriff's office. So this is what the numbers that I was reading off to you. So we found okay.
And then we do have the costing for the levy
Yes.
lid lift,
And-
which I think is on this.
If you
I
go-
sent it to them too.
there's also a tab on this one as well.
Okay. Good.
It's called levy lid lift scenarios. Yes. So what this is a just a table of what a levy lid lift would look like on the medium home value of $528,000 and the revenue that would be generated by the lid lift. So if you were to do a 1 cent lid lift, it would generate $1,050,000, and the cost on a medium home would be $5.28. And then it just scales up from there, depending on how many cents per thousand you would request. Councilor Bowman, I think that's what you're asking for, correct?
That's absolutely, that's super informative. Would you mind scrolling back up to the top? I wanted, yeah, thank you so much.
This doesn't include like the city deficit.
So from the manager's point of view, where is the cutoff that you feel comfortable to support all 40 deputies and support staff, knowing that there's going to be down trace additional costs across the county? What lift amount are you recommending?
Well, when I take a look at this and hearing Mark's numbers, the top number isn't going to cover both of them in 7 years because it's 10 million and 21 million, which is 31 million.
No, 10 and 11. Total is 21. The total would be 21.
Oh, total of 21. Okay. The only hesitation I have today to solidify this number is I want to have a discussion with Mark and the budget office and sheriff's office is about our structural deficit in general fund, because I want to make sure that what we are going out for is what we're going to get and not have any sort of impact if we still have a deficit, knowing that the largest piece of our deficit is the entire law and justice system in the county. And so I don't want residents to say, yes, we want all these deputies, we get the amount on here, we get them paid for, but in the end, we still have that deficit that we have to recoup. And so I want to just have a little bit more analysis on that, but I would recommend at a minimum what is being asked. If we didn't have that other piece, our structural deficit, I would at a minimum would want to support what is being requested today to cover that. And maybe even, yeah. And there might be some flexibility to cover part of that structural deficit, and the 1% will help with that as well.
So one of the blog comments that was pretty pronounced in looking at Prop 4 was people misunderstood the lift amount. As soon as they hear levy lift, they're hearing the cap is gone. They're going to tax our property in ever increasing amounts into the future. So that's a narrative we need to really clarify for the public. And then as we phase the deputies in, and I appreciated the 10 per year, that I think that's a great plan and a narrative to really emphasize. But so for the first few years, you're going to be building the need for the revenue, but you're going to be collecting that revenue. So you're going to, you'll have a fund balance policy, I'm imagining, for that'll be impacted with a levy lift, but it needs to be for a specific amount, and we'll be probably getting revenue in advance of the sheriff being able to get people hired and through the academy. Especially, I think you'll do better recruitment wise once your numbers get better. You'll probably stem the flow of those vacancies that you presently have. But in any case, you understand, Mark, what I'm getting at is,
Sure.
What do we need up front? What is the specific levy lift that will ensure that we have a comfortable margin, including the structural deficit that the county manager just mentioned?
Right. And it would take, again, as we phase in the hiring, you're correct. We're phasing in, and then the costs accumulate until we're fully staffed. So we would have to balance that in part of the ask, and that would take more analysis. I understand there are different levy lid lifts. One is a one-time levy lid lift that just is fixed and just continues on. Or if you wanted to do like Prop 4 suggested, they were doing a one-time levy lid lift and then a 5% increase for the next 5 years. And that 5% was over the total amount of their property tax, not just the levy lid lift. So we would have to find the right balance. And so, we may not need to ask for the full amount up front, but then have some escalation so that when we do reach full staffing, we're matching the revenue and whatever else we might need for the structural deficit. So again, those are scenarios that we'd have to build in. Haven't had time to do that yet. I'm sorry. But again, this is more for discussion and information for the council so you can see what types of numbers we're dealing with and what a levy lid lift might provide.
Mark, may I just repeat this back to you so that you can correct me where I'm wrong? It seems that if the public were to pay $105.60, which is at that 20 cent rate, then we would raise $21 million, which would cover both the personnel in the sheriff's office and the countywide support.
You are spot on, Counselor. I couldn't have said it better.
Good. Thank you. Well, that's very clear. And, I think one of the things that was very confusing in the city's proposal was that 5% increase per year, because it went from a low number of 100 something to 500 something for the impact on the individual ratepayer. And I think that was a confusing aspect of it. And there are some advantages, I think, therefore, to not going at it in a way that is confusing incremental. If you did half for a while until the hiring caught up and then did the other half, maybe something like that, because that would lessen the impact on the ratepayer. But staying away from confusing is important.
And I want to add to that because Karen, you and I are spot on the same page. And I was actually looking at the 20 to 25 cent range initially as well. But the other consternation that was out there was, what are they going to do with this money? Is there going to be a separate line item to make sure that we are actually hiring police officers, in this case, deputy sheriffs? I mean, I think that's a concern of the public at large is, okay, they're going to get all this money. It's going to be ever increasing, 5% a year, and then they're going to spend it on other things. So, I think we need to really compact our focus on what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and to do it in a way that the public can digest. So I think I look forward to those additional numbers, Mark. I think you fully understand what we're talking about and concerned about.
And even though this money can go into general fund, we can certainly do a separate fund like we did with public safety sales tax to be transparent, and we line it out of exactly. And of course, whatever is communicated either on the ballot title or communications, what needs to be very clear as well.
And just to add to that, council always has control of the expenditure side. So this being a property tax revenue, you're always able to determine through the budget process of how it's going to be spent. So it always comes back to you, even if the revenue is being received by the county, the expenditure side is always controlled by the council. So,
and just one other thought, and Mark, this would make your life ever so much more complicated, but since at the first, the sheriff's hiring won't be up to the full 40, plus the unfunded positions, the funded positions right now that are open, that'd be, say 50 some personnel, there would be some money that would be collected in that fund. That perhaps could be used for the numbers that you don't know yet in the PA's office and indigent defense. Just a thought.
Yeah, and I would expect by the time we flesh all of this out, I'll have those numbers. I mean, I could have those later today.
I believe the sheriff would like to add something.
Just one quick point. There is a savings too of the overtime. We're about almost $4 million in overtime. And that's just to cover the patrol shifts. That's where that 12 patrol deputies came from. So initially there would be, once we get them hired, so after about 12, then you would have regular overtime. So that is a savings as well. But Mr. Gascoigne, we haven't sat down yet. I know we've been putting this together last week. We had our numbers, but the actual budget numbers and what that might look like, it might be another little bit of a savings there as far as the overtime costs.
Any other
Okay.
further comments, questions?
Yep, got a question and then a comment. So when you determined the downstream costs, did you take our current cost, divide it by the number of deputies, come with that number, and then add that number per deputy?
So the way that worked is for example, district court, they analyze the number of calls or the number of cases that those deputies generate. And then they extrapolated out what the new officers would add to the current caseload. So all of that work the methodology for that is all based on what our existing data shows that a patrol officer per se would generate, and then extrapolating those out with some acknowledgement that currently we are in a lot of our shifts, we are not fully staffed. And so the full impact of that doesn't come until we actually have those shifts fully staffed.
Okay, and just because I wanted to make sure, like, I mean, if we were to cut the number of sheriff deputies today in half, you wouldn't see those downstream costs reduced by half.
Sure.
It'd probably be somewhere around 3/4 to 90%. You would still have those expenses. So as you add more deputies, that kind of support network diminished to some degree. And I know none of us know the math behind that, but that's been accounted for.
Yes, we take into consideration that it's not a one-to-one relationship. As you know, we're not going to have an additional percentage of felony cases because we're trying to get all those now, right? But because of the additional officers, we'll be able to have some increase in the number of cases.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very similar. Well, it's the same methodology that the Law and Justice groups presented to council. Just because you have more police doesn't mean we have more murders. And actually, district courts may significantly reduce because it doesn't include the cameras, the traffic cameras which that was going to be a huge increase. So there is going to be a significant reduction for district court with it just supporting the sheriff's office.
Okay. So then my next comment would be that I don't know how we do this, but it seems to me like we should be working with the city on this and have a community-wide plan. Because quite frankly, if we move forward with this and the voter does say yes, and we begin our part, and then the city rolls out another Prop 4, then what? Because then we still don't have the mechanism to cover and support what their ask is. So I don't know how we do this, but it seems to me like we need to be working together to figure this out in a holistic way so that we aren't caught scrambling.
I'd like to try to summarize where I think we may be headed. It sounds as though we're headed towards levy lid lift, and I would suggest maybe in the range of 20 to 25 cents. And I would not want to add to or exacerbate the structural deficit that we're in, and that there's still additional numbers that need to be massaged here. Some may go up, some may go down. I agree that this needs to be a simple, tight package that can be easily explained to the voters. And we don't have very much time to pull this all together. So I'm wondering if this is something the council will, this council will need to vote on this year. Is that correct?
If you would like to do a levy to lift in February, yes, we need to, like I said, we need to have everything in the auditor's office by December 13th. So this council has to approve. And what I would like to do is have a special council meeting Monday afternoon to come back with all those additional details as well as a draft resolution for council's consideration.
Chair Mevigi, you were muted before. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I was on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So number one, I want to take this on before my term is up. I want to have a vote on this. And I want to see that 20 to 25 cent, as Councilor Marshall just mentioned. I think that's the route to go. But I also I was trying to comment on what Glenn was commenting on. We are doing a very different thing than what Prop 4 did. Prop 4 worked on Vancouver-centric costs without collaborating with district court, with the PA, without the public defense. You know, they didn't collaborate with all the stakeholders, and hopefully that will now occur in the law and justice stakeholder group. We are doing something very different because we are capturing all the downstream costs. We are considering the PA. We're considering the jails. We're considering all those partners that we need to consider. So I absolutely agree. We don't ever want to do this in a vacuum with the city. They need to be brought along in this conversation. But we are doing something very different. We're in a very different starting point than where Prop 4 was. So hopefully we're not going to revisit how that was done in isolation. So in any case, I'm hopeful that there are 3 counselors that want to do it this year so that it moves ahead next year. And we'll leave it up to the public to decide the outcome.
So I have a kind of a question then just for us all to consider, and that is, again, if we move forward with this and it's approved by the voter, and then the city moves forward with their version and it's approved, and we don't have the coverage for those expenses, so what gives? I mean, are we going to have to take from the number of deputies that we have to fund the support behind their officers? It's something that needs to be discussed.
I think within Law and Justice, we have a group that, and I think this issue has been raised because there wasn't really adequate collaboration with the city. I think we're poised to be in a more collaborative stance and recognize all of those costs and be very clear with the city, understand who's got what numbers. We need to sit down and really look at all of that. So I think we're in a better position to be more collaborative with the city going forward.
I might say, I believe this is a different request than Prop 4. The main issue here is the sheriff's office deputies. There are other things that we are considering as well, but that is the main issue here. Prop 4 had a lot of things in there. I agree with you that we do work collaboratively with the city on some things, but we still have a jail issue. We still have more issues that throughout the year that we need to work on. Counselor, with all due respect, you're trying to go down 2 steps, and we haven't even gotten this first one even passed by the voters yet. And each one, we do need to look at it, but I don't know if you can project that far. Our main purpose presenting this was to get our staffing up at the sheriff's office. And I know, I'm confident we have a good enough narrative to tell the people and say, here's what we have, here's where we need to be, and here's why. Prop 4 had a lot more things involved with that. This is just to get our sheriff's office staffing up to an acceptable level.
I have a quick question for Mark, if I may. Mark, the numbers in column B, are those numbers split with the various jurisdictions?
The county property taxes is countywide, so we don't share any of the county property tax with jurisdictions.
So what is that in E through H?
Oh, that was, if you were to scroll up, that's a public safety sales tax analysis. It's not part of the property tax analysis.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It was just added information if we were to do.
I
a
see.
property tax.
There's the title. Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other further comments or questions?
Just fully supportive. This is something that needs to happen, but I'm just concerned. What Chair Medvedi said earlier, I want to make sure it's successful. And I think we should take some breathing time, go over what happened with Prop 4. I think there's more that needs to be done to be able to convince the voters that this is what's right for our county. I think we're moving a little bit too quick on it.
I just want to make a comment on that. We don't have time to sit in our laurels and wait. As Kathleen mentioned, the cutoff is in December at the very beginning of the month. So.
Right. What I'm saying is essentially, I don't think that a February having something on the ballot is appropriate. I think that we need some more time than that.
So if you recall, we did visit this in June or July. It's been quite some time to get to this point. I think we can move a little bit faster than we have been.
And I would just, I'm sorry, I would just add though that there'll be other requests that we might be going forward with related to the jail. And so I think we need to keep that in mind too, in terms of the timing for all of this.
Do we need to do a roll call on proceeding forward with this, Kathleen?
Aren't we all on board?
Yeah.
I think we are.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark and Sheriff Horsch. We really appreciate you coming and giving us this information. This was very enlightening. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mark, for all your work and just coming back from a 3-week vacation.
And
Thank you.
Can't wait till Monday for more.
yeah, and I was gonna say, I am gonna schedule a time for council on Monday to go over the final details to make sure everybody's on the same page on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to 5, new business.
None today.
Right, number 6, counselor reports.
I have a couple.
Right, go ahead, Counselor Berman.
One was that yesterday the treasurer held her third quarter financial meeting, and there are $1 billion plus in the county investment pool. And that, of course, includes Clark County being about 48% of that, with school districts being about 38% and on down from there. And there is a sliver of the Clark County portion that is earning interest from that investment relative to the general fund. And we saw that this morning. Then I also wanted to mention that the Vancouver Library Capital Facility Area Staff Report, 3 of us attended. Was that today or yes? That was yesterday. And it was interesting in that they had the budget and levy certification for 2025 come before us. And once again, that was approved as it has been annually, this time for the collection of $3.642 million in 2025 from the taxpayers. And that is completing more of the funding for the facility area planning that was issued in 20-year bonds some time ago in 2009 and so on for equipping the library facilities in the city of Vancouver. So at any rate, that is moving forward in a very good way.
Thank you, Counselor Bowerman. Is there any further council reports? All right, we're moving on to number 7, work session requests.
None today.
Right, and number 8, policy requests. Do we have any from Jordan? Is he online?
He's
All
on.
right.
Jordan, are you coming on?
Hey, counselors, this
Well,
is Jordan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Good afternoon. I am at a rest stop off of I-5 coming to you. This is also a policy update. I was testifying to the Washington State Supreme Court this morning on behalf of counsel regarding your letter and reactions to the proposed indigent defense caseload standards. This was the second hearing that the Supreme Court has held on the topic. It sounds like they are going to consider, and there will be an update on December 4th. They may or may not issue an official, it's not a ruling, but an official opinion on the proposed caseload standards at that time, but that's the next update that we'll get. So wanted to give you an update on that. And then just a couple other things I wanted to mention today. One is I have drafted a comment letter to the IBR, Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, based on what I've heard from council previously and some of the comments that were provided when Deputy Administrator Green came down to do a work session with council. And so hopefully it's on your screen right now. I'm sorry, I can't see since I'm on the phone, but I would ask that if you have any edits or additions, I would be happy to make those for council. And I would ask that after I make those, that you would give direction, if you approve, for me to make those edits and submit that document to the IBR project staff.
Thank you, Jordan. Just a comment. When do you need our feedback for comments?
It would be, if you have any edits today, that'd be great. Otherwise, by the end of the week would be ideal, since I believe the comments are due next week.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions, comments from council and policy? All right, well, thank you, Jordan. Be safe on the rest of your drive home.
Thank you. And just one other quick update for you on policy items. The BEAD program announced yesterday that they have opened up their application for funding. There are 7 project areas in Clark County that have between 900 and 1,500 individual homes or businesses that ports, utilities, and private internet service providers can bid on to provide service. And applications are due January 25th of next year. And I have updated the BEAD tab on the county council page. So if folks want to learn more, they can go there and find resources, including the notice of funding opportunity. And that's all I've got for you. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Jordan. Safe travels.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 9 executive sessions. 9.1, pending litigation, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I, for 20 minutes. 9.2, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little g, for 15 minutes. I was hoping that we could take a small break before adjourning to executive session, if everyone was okay. I mean, very brief. If everyone's okay with that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so that would take us to, I always like to add extra time. And I'm usually always right. So I'm gonna say 3:30. Does that sound about right?
That works. And just for the record, there is no after action.
Thank you, Kathleen. See you all in executive session.
I'm ready.
Good afternoon. The chair has asked that we extend executive session for 15 minutes. They will resume at 3:45. Thank you.
Okay, we're back from executive session. Do I have a motion?
Is that a motion to adjourn?
Madam
Sorry,
Chair.
motion to adjourn. Excuse me.
Second that.
Thank you.
So I take it we stand adjourned.